Hi, my name is Richard Pennycook and welcome to Export Kit. In this example, I'll be demonstrating a PSD to WordPress export using the suite version 126. So off the bat, you'll see that we make use of a lot of pages. In WordPress, it's a very structured output, so you actually need a few default pages to render your theme. These are the header, the index, and the footer. These are the three main pages that you require. WordPress though recommends that you also add a page, an archive, a search, etc. And we also have a custom services page that we've added here. So we're going to go through each of these just to actually show you how Export Kit handles WordPress. So if we look at the header, one of the first things be it that with each folder, what we want to do is basically have as many folders as possible. WordPress is a very structured output. So the more folders you have, the more structured your code output will be. Now, one of the new tags that we have in 126 is our code tag. What this will allow us to do, and if you look at the layer here, is actually add inline PHP to any text layer. This will render the content using the styles that you basically denoted in Photoshop. So you see here that we have blog info name. You can add whatever code that you'd like. It'll just render the same way that WordPress would. One of the next things that we want to take a look at is our actual background. The logo. We have a new tag called our WP option. What this will do is render an option in our WordPress admin to actually change this item, and this is responsive be it for the text or the image or the actual shape layer. So it will change depending on the actual layer that you've used and allow you to modify those options. So if we take a look at the tag, what you'll see is that we have a logo. This will be the name of the option that we're editing, and we also have a home logo. This is our ID of the option in WordPress. WordPress requires unique IDs whenever you're actually modifying any type of attribute that you set. So you'll see here that we also have a menu. Now our menu is constructed where we have two folders. One is our margin. This is not actually rendered in the output. What this will do is actually just maintain a space and a size for the menu itself. But within our nav menu, this is one of our new features as well too. You can denote whether you want a horizontal or a vertical menu. Along with the title, and you'll see that we have header menu. What this will do is that in the actual output, you can assign an individual menu to that item. And you'll see that what we have here is we have a few skins for our menu. We have a background and a text layer for our skins. What this will do is generate each menu item using these skins that we've denoted here. Now, if you're familiar with the WordPress themes, you'll see that the text that's contained within the label is the same characters that you would use in WordPress to basically allow it to generate the title. So we don't do anything differently than what you would do in WordPress naturally. Now, if we go ahead and we take a look at the footer, so let's just scroll down. The footer itself, you'll see that we've added a couple more options, and we've also added options to these tags. So you can basically build the header and the footer how you'd like, and it'll render it correctly. So if we go and we look at the index, and let's just hide a couple pages just so you can see it better. The index makes use of the WordPress loop, and a lot of pages will. There are two types of ways that you can do the loop. You can either denote an entry, which will do a default WordPress loop, or you can denote a post, where what you're doing is you're designating where the information will be displayed. So let's take a look at those in a little bit more detail. You'll see here with the index, we've added a couple more options that you can change in your WordPress admin. And again, these you'll actually see once we go to the admin. But if we take a look at the loop, and you'll see that we have posts here. Because we're using posts, what we're doing is we're telling it basically that we're going to designate where the information is being displayed. You can see some of this here, so let's take a look. We have PHP the title, we have PHP the excerpt. We've also added a link here, and you can actually see it if we can kind of go over to the permalink. I don't know if you can see that there correctly. What this will do is actually give a link to that post, and we also have an image tag here for the thumbnail of that post. You'll see a couple of shapes. This is actually fixes. Now WordPress makes great use of fixes to designate where content will break. That way you can actually denote spaces between content while they're rendering. Now the loop itself, it's comprised of either post or entry. You have to have a loop folder. Within that loop you can have basically whatever you'd like, but for the individual post item, we recommend that you use posts if you're using posts, and use entry if you're using entries. Now we also have new conditional folders where, for instance, we have whether the post has a thumbnail, and we also have if the post doesn't have a thumbnail, and you'll see how these render in the output. Now all pages will use this similar context and logic when building. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at, for instance, the single. Now you'll see for the single, what we have is the title at the top. So this will basically, and we're using the code tag, this will replace with the WordPress title. We also have some variables to designate the date that the post was done, some of the categories and the tags. Now you can also use the next and the previous link. and these are done a little bit differently, where you can just basically add the tag for it directly. And let's look at the next. Now again, the thumbnail is basically if the post has a thumbnail, so you have to put the conditional folder whether or not you want it to display, otherwise it'll just permanently display. You'll see for the content though, we have a fix, and we're using entries now because what we're going to do is we're going to use the default WordPress output. Now we've drawn the content. There's various ways that you can include it. You can either use an empty layer, or if you use a shape, it'll basically take the position and the size for when it renders the content. We also have a sidebar that we've added. Now if you basically remember what we did for our posts, we have our entries, and again we're going to use a single entry when we're actually designating the actual post itself. We also have our loop, and within our loop we have our content. So we have our comments area, and this is virtual, so you don't really need to add content. You can just basically add the actual layer tags. And we also have our author content, and again we can add our inline PHP to designate where that information will be stored. Now again, we have to make use of fixes. So for instance, it will break here once the loop finishes, so that way the author is basically maintained at the bottom of the actual page. Now if we take a look at the archives, it's going to be under the same principles. Oh sorry, let's take a look at the page. So you'll see the page here, we're not actually drawing the content, so what this will do is draw the content with the full width basically. So let's just take a look at it really quick. So the entry and the content, so this will just span to whatever width we've designated the content. And let's take a look at archives. So archives, you'll see that what we've done is we've drawn the result using the same logic again. We have our search view similar to our archive with our sidebar. We have our 404 page. This is an option, so you can change this in the output along with this text as well. And we also have our custom services page, where we have our options here that we can actually change in our WordPress admin. Now the next thing that we're going to look at is WordPress requires many theme styles to actually output correctly. So this, I kid you not, you will have to actually denote these or it will not render the way that you expect. Now if you've watched any of our previous tutorials, you'll see that we do allow for any type of custom style that you want to designate. So with our style tags, what you can do is you can actually take over the WordPress themes, and you'll see a few of them here. So what we have is that we have our site, our DT, our D, our anchor hover, a couple table values, our caption text. We have the hover for the caption text, our comments, and we also have a few for our nav items. These are some of the basic required ones, but you can add as many themes as you'd like, to basically personalize your theme. You can personalize your theme in any way. So this will allow you to give a great output. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at how this will actually render. Now the great thing about Export Kit is typically what you can just do is just close and reopen. Now one thing we do want to note, if we had exported it the way that we just had it, because all the folders were open, this would take about 20 to 25 minutes to export. So what I do recommend is that you take a couple seconds, well, it'll be about 20 or 30 seconds, and you close each individual folder. This will actually speed up your export by about 75%. The export now will only take relatively about 10 minutes to complete. So let's go ahead and let's begin. Now for the purpose of this video, I'm gonna basically speed this up and just show you what it outputs in the end. Now that our export is complete, what we want to do is load our WordPress theme. Now, we've created a basic WordPress blog just for testing, and this is the WordPress version 3.91. Now, we've also loaded the theme unit variables. This is required and is the true test of any WordPress theme. It must pass the theme unit test. So what we're going to do is load our WordPress theme, and we're going to see it here afterwards. So let's just go ahead and do that. So you can simply just drag the folder, or what you can do is zip it and load it online if that's basically what you're doing if you're working with an online blog. So all we have to do is just refresh the page. And you'll see that our theme is loaded. Now the icon was created basically from our actual Photoshop file. What it will do is it will actually take a screenshot of your Photoshop document, and then it will actually crop and resize it. So basically, if you want to create your own custom icon, you can just add a skip layer or a skip folder and create an icon at the top within the same region. So let's go ahead and let's go back and take a look at the actual WordPress theme. Let's go ahead and activate that. So our theme is now active. You'll see this is our current theme now. This is the original WordPress theme. So let's reload the page. And you'll see that we actually have our full-blown WordPress theme from our Photoshop file. So now let's go ahead and let's take a look at each individual section in a bit more detail. You'll see with the heading, it actually says my website. This is the title of our actual blog. Now this is reflective from our Photoshop file. If we take a look, we're using blog info name. Now we did note that we did have a custom menu, and again this was using our WordPress nav option. So what we have here is that we have our actual menu called header menu. So if we go back to the WordPress admin, what we can do is we can actually modify that. So if we look at our menus, now what we want to do is we want to assign a menu. So we can do this, let's select short for example, and we want to manage the location. Now this might be different depending on your WordPress version, but basically you just want to assign it. You'll see that we have header menu, and this is reflective of our Photoshop file where we actually used header menu in the layer name. So let's go back, let's assign short to it, let's save those changes. And let's refresh the page, and you'll see automatically we have our entire menu from our Photoshop file. Now again, this is reflective of the actual settings that we've declared here. You'll see that we do have a few classes that we've actually set. So under label and BG, if you note in our styles, let's just take a look at them really quick. What we have is we have our nav item BG and we have our nav item label. Now we also have an anchor and a regular label. This is just so our default anchor doesn't overwrite our actual label styles, because you'll see we do declare an anchor here. So you'll see these two styles for our default and our hover state, and this is reflective again in our actual WordPress output. Now in our index file, let's go back and let's take a look at it again. You'll see that what we did was that we assigned fixes to actually designate where the content will be located. In our actual design, we also included the title and the excerpt and an image if there was one included. Now in our theme unit test, we didn't actually download the images, but if a post does have an image, you'll see that it will change it to include that image. Now we did also assign the actual permalink for the post, so if you clicked one of these, it would actually go to that page. So let's go ahead and let's test one. You'll see we're on the markup and the formatting page. Now again, all of these definitions and these styles are done from our actual Photoshop file. So let's go ahead and let's test a few more pages, and you'll see again this is actually our single page. So this page itself does not have an image, otherwise the post thumbnail image would have appeared. Let's look for one that does have an image. Let's go through a few first. So this is our page image alignment. You'll see that it fully passes the WordPress theme unit test. Let's go back and let's look at our page formatting. Now let's go ahead and let's take a look at a post per se. Well, that's a standard. Let's look at one more. I have no clue as to exactly what posts are within what time frames. It's scheduled. Okay, let's take a look at Hello World. So we'll see, for instance, it also supports the comments that we had. And again, all these styles are defined in our actual Photoshop file. Let's try to find one that does have an image. Let's test Twitter embeds, why not? Twitter embeds work perfectly. Let's test audio. Either way, you can go through it yourself, but you'll see it does pass the theme unit test off the bat, directly from Photoshop, a WordPress theme output, in a couple of minutes. Now this theme itself, out of the gate, let's take a look at some of the other admin options. Now we did say that we did allow you to actually customize a few things. Once you add the theme, the first thing you'll get is your actual admin area. Now this will be dependent upon what individual options you've assigned to what pages, and you'll see them basically in individual tabs. Now I did say that what it will do is it'll actually segment the options depending on the folder. So let's take a look at the header per se. We have header content and we also have the BG color in the logo. If we go back to the actual Photoshop file, we take a look at header. What we have here is we have the BG color, that's what we've assigned it, and we have the logo. So we go back to our WordPress admin, and we can actually modify these options directly in the admin. Now there are a few default options where per se you could change the name of your theme if you wanted, so let's save those changes along with some of the logo and the other settings for the content if you want a default margin, and you can also just revert it back to the default settings also. Now we did set a lot of options for a few pages, so you can see that it will actually segment them all individually, so you can modify these options on the fly in your actual output. Now this is great if you have a client per se that they want to design, and after the design they want to change every individual thing. Now you don't have to complain, just tell them sure, charge them $50 for every time you have to change a letter name. So let's explore a couple options really quick. We notice on our index page, if you look in our index header, we have a title and a description. Now this is reflected from our Photoshop file. You'll see that this is our index header, and if we actually click the layer, you'll note that we do have an option for title, and the ID is home title, and you'll see that this is actually located in index header. So if we flip back to WordPress, we have Toronto's award-winning creative agency, and let's go back to our home page. Toronto's award-winning creative agency. Now let's go ahead and test this. Now that we saved that, you can see my new WordPress blog. Let's just go ahead and refresh that page. My new WordPress blog. Oh yeah. Imagine how much your clients will love that. Every layer that you create, you can simply add an option. Now they can take it and do whatever they'd like. Now if we go and we look at the actual PHP files, let's go ahead and let's open up an editor. You can use any editor. And let's explore the actual files themselves. You'll see that it does include the skins, and all skins are referenced in the actual WordPress folder, also with individual styles depending on what you've created. Now if we go and we look at the PHP files, actually we don't need to look at too many. Let's look at the styles, let's look at index, functions, header, and possibly archive for fun. So in our styles, you'll see that it does create all the necessary WordPress styles and also all the styles from your actual Photoshop file. Now the index, you'll see it is very structured and it is very clean HTML and PHP. Now this is all designated from your actual Photoshop PSD file. You'll note really quick, you'll see that we have an option, home description, home title, and again if we were to check the PSD, home title, home description. So let's go back and look at the PHP. You'll see all our options are declared. It actually structures your entire WordPress PHP file based on your actual PSD from Photoshop. So you'll see that within our actual index we have our div posts, we have our while, which is our actual loop, we have if it has a post thumbnail, if it doesn't it'll just actually render differently slightly, and it'll actually render all the information individually based on our actual Photoshop PSD file. So if we were to look again at our index page, let's go and check really quick. We have our posts, we have our loop, and we have our fixes, both before and after the loop. We have our individual posts, and we have our 2 conditional folders. So you'll see that we have our actual loop, we have our conditional folder within our post, we actually have our fix, which is before, and we have our fix after the loop. And you'll see that we have each actual individual condition, whether it has a thumbnail or it doesn't have a thumbnail. Header again, very clean, very clear, very concise. You'll also see the custom menu that it will create based on your actual Photoshop file once again. You'll note that these are the characters that we use to display the name. Whatever character you define in Photoshop, it will use that, so we recommend that you choose exactly what and where you want placed. Let's just go back to the PHP file again. Now blog info name, that was actually declared in our Photoshop file. And let's take a look at the functions. Now you'll see that it does build your entire functions file along with your actual admin. This is both the view and all the actual elements that are required to customize your Photoshop file, and it does this on the fly. Let's just scroll through it. You can take a look at it in detail once you do it yourself.